It's important to understand that Marxists by this time learned their lesson from the previous century, where Charles Spurgeon was a problem. And what the Marxists resolved to do is to basically put up their own version of a Charles Spurgeon.
Well, there's a couple pieces of information that has come to light about Martin Luther King Jr. that when he went to graduate school, he wasn't doing so well, falling behind in his grades, in his classes, but there were some professors who were there to help him out. But the way they helped him out was to help him to plagiarize some of his work. Another thing was the way that they saw him. Now, I'm going to use my own words here. The way that they saw him, and you're going to see in the video, the way that they saw him was, if he was back on the plantation back in the day, he would have been known as a good house Negro. Check this out.
Again, this agenda for communism to infiltrate the seminaries, and as a result, infiltrate the churches, was unfolding at Crozer Theological Seminary, and King was its best student. Some of his professors saw weaknesses and aloofness in MLK, an inability to keep up, but they must have also saw usefulness in him, especially in graduate school, where some of his professors actually helped him plagiarize his assignments in order to get his doctoral degree. In a letter of recommendation that Professor Insland wrote for King's graduate school application, Insland said of King that the comparatively small number of progressive and thoroughly trained Negro leaders is still so small that it is more than an even chance that one as adequately trained as King will find ample opportunity for useful service. He is entirely free from those somewhat annoying qualities which some men of his race acquire when they find themselves in the distinctly higher percent of their group. It's important to understand that Marxists by this time learned their lesson from the previous century, where Charles Spurgeon was a problem. And what the Marxists resolved to do is to basically put up their own version of a Charles Spurgeon, to put up their own version of a pastor who will preach not the gospel, but the ideas of Marxism.
So I went to Google and I asked, were some of King's professors in graduate school, were they helping him to plagiarize some of his work? And this is what it says. So it says, there is no evidence that professors at Martin Luther King Jr.'s graduate schools helped him to plagiarize. Instead, historical investigations found that King's uncredited borrowing, plagiarizing, was a result of his own poor academic habits, and these patterns were entirely undetected by his professors at the time. Okay, I mean, they could say that, but is it true? So further on, it says, faculty members, including his primary advisor and readers like L. Harold DeWolf and S. Paul Schilling at Boston University, did not realize King was extensively borrowing from the works of others, such as the writings of fellow student Jack Boozer. Look, plain and simple, King was a plagiarist.